Hello again, me once more, this time the second Doctor, the old Patrick Troughton. There he is with his sonic lead pipe, by the look of it. He's not a very happy figure, that one. He looks very sad. Much more so than the second Doctor ever actually did. He must be very depressed there. Who knows what tragedy put that expression on his face. But the thing with my first Doctor Who video that I did a couple of months ago was I had an American friend of mine who's been badgering me for weeks now to do another one. It's highlights of his life. So this is for you, Hound. I hope you enjoy it, and your wife as well. You know, it's good to have a fan. Patrick Troughton's second Doctor is almost the obvious one to like. He's the one actors who play with art generally think was the best. Most obviously, in fact, Matt Smith, who was someone who had no real prior knowledge of Doctor Who before he took the role. When he watched old episodes, he pretty much instantly decided Patrick Troughton was the best. Was influenced in his entire performance by it, which you can really tell. Really, especially if you watch The Enemy of the World, a story that didn't even exist when Matt Smith was doing his research. The bit at the start where Troughton jumps into the sea and belly flops it. The 11th Doctor is the only other one I can imagine doing that, which sort of shows how direct the influence of Troughton on him was, and on so many of the others. You know, Colin Baker thought he was the best. Sylvester McCoy thought he was the best. No doubt a couple of the others did as well. I think Tom Baker recently said he thought Troughton was the best, but again, Tom Baker is insane. I think that was also one of the interviews where he claimed to have killed John Pertwee. So do you trust anything Tom says? Personally, I don't. So he's got sort of a reputation and an aura around him that is potentially very hard to live up to when you go back and revisit his episodes. He could turn out to be a bit crap. Could anybody match the reputation of being the Doctor's Doctor? Oddly enough, he does. Because, firstly, Patrick Troughton was an exceptionally good character actor. Unlike William Hartnell, more than up to the workload, even if he did wear him down a lot towards the end. And the first thing to say about Troughton's Doctor is that he has this reputation based on how he was when he came back in the colour stories for his couple of cameo roles, which for a long time had been seen a lot more than any of his actual stories. And this is when he's sort of a lovable uncle, oh my giddy aunts, good grief, sort of typical eccentric, that's my cat again. She's disagreeing with me once more. She's going, oh... She's silent this time though, she's just nibbling at my fingers without making any noise, just to make me look especially crazy. He has this reputation as lovable uncle, grandfather figure, and the received wisdom is that he starts off in Power of the Daleks as completely mad, completely over the top, completely unpredictable, but this very quickly calms down and he settles into the lovable uncle role. And what I found when watching his era in order is that this is not the case. The real surprise for me was how far into his run the second Doctor is completely and utterly off his tits. Well into season 5, you can't really predict anything that he's going to do. There's an edge to him. You know, he will blow up a colony to prove a point. He'll be sarcastic, he'll be rude. Much harder edge to the character than he's generally perceived as having. And you can always tell that Troughton, who wasn't really an actor who was interested in playing roles long term. This was basically something he did. And it'd be fair to say for the money, but the financial advantages were very much an impact on him, decided to take a role that nobody was expecting to last much longer anyway. But he's sort of keeping it interesting for himself by really trying hard never to do the same thing twice. And that gives him a danger and an unpredictability that is genuinely surprising and which you wouldn't guess from watching the 3 Doctors or 5 Doctors. It makes the 6th Doctor between dilemma at times look perfectly sedate and rational. I mean, obviously with the Underwater Menace is probably him at his most eccentric, going around with a fruit bowl on his head and destroying Atlantis, killing most of the population at the end when he didn't really have to. I mean, laughing about it. That's sort of mad, mercurial character he is. I mean, eventually, sort of towards the end of series 5, he does settle down and become more sedate, more like he's traditionally thought of. And that's probably because the pressure of the Doctor Who schedules getting to him by that point, and a sort of he's not putting less effort in, but he is obviously a lot more exhausted, especially when he gets to the end of series 6. I mean, if you compared how he looked in the first surviving episode of the Underwater Menace to how he looks in the War Games, he looks like he's aged a hell of a lot more than 3 years. I mean, he looks more haggard across that 3-year period than he does between the War Games and the 3 Doctors another 3 years later. So clearly it was taking its toll on him by the end, and he becomes a more standard character. Not any less entertaining, not any more less well played, but he's not being as extreme in his acting choices, because making sort of 40 odd episodes of television a year on a weekly schedule, yeah, it's not going to... It didn't affect him as badly as it did affect William Hartnell, but it was getting to him by the end. That's part of the reason why he left, and that's part of the reason there is such a change in his performance. Most of the first 2 years, the second Doctor is completely unpredictable, completely unguessable, and mesmerising to watch. It's an extraordinary performance of Patrick Troughton. He's probably the single most consistent actor in the role. If you allow the fact that Tom Baker, who just has inner charisma, yeah, a lot of the time Tom Baker probably isn't trying that hard and can co-submit on the fact that he's just watchable in anything he does. With Troughton, even when he is more tired towards the end, it's still a considered performance. It's still a good performance, and it's a masterclass in television acting, really. Probably doesn't get, as I'm saying, he gets sort of the credits from the actors who played the part and the fans, but I think the general public, sadly, and of course, with so much of his era missing, it's that's probably a position that's never going to change. But he never gets credit from sort of general public that he really deserves. Certainly, I think his performance is much, much better than John Pertwee's, but that's going to be for another video. Series 4 generally starts off continuing the trend of the later Hartnell stories of being a bit all over the place in style and tone. Not as consistently good as I think the last Hartnell season was. It's a bit more uneven, but equally you do have Power of the Daleks, which may well be the best debut story for any Doctor. On one hand, it does the obvious thing, when you're changing the role for the first time, put the Daleks in it to reassure people, but at the same time, so much of what he does is brave. Almost as if they don't care if it destroys the show or not, and it gets away with it. I mean, obviously, the performance of the Doctor is one of the things that was tremendously bold of them to do in making him so different. But also the fact the Daleks are played a bit nice for most of it, the fact that there's a lot of politics in it, and a lot of human colony angst, which is the sort of thing the Hartnell stories never used to do very well. It pulls it off there, and it's probably David Whittaker's best scripts. Though Evil of the Daleks at the end of the season comes pretty close, even though that's a bit more padded with all the stuff with Jamie doing the traps tests and still probably the two best 60s Dalek stories in that season there. And then you've got the Underwater Menace, which, episode 2, once it came back, is better than you'd expect. Still not very good though. It's a very odd story. It's in sort of Plan 9 from outer space territory, and it's interesting to have that early Troughton episode see what he's doing with Ron at that point, because he is a very visual actor, which is something I'll come back to in a minute. But it's probably the weakest 60s Who story, even if it is endlessly entertaining. And Joseph First, if nothing else, he plays that part exactly how it should be played. Nobody mocked Dr. Zardoff in a very uneven story. He is brilliant. Series 4, slightly uneven, slightly all over the place. But there's some very good stuff in there. The real surprise for me, obviously, watch was Series 5. Because I've always been slightly dismissive of it. There's only one story that doesn't have the same plot. All the others, based on the siege, mind control, traitors. It's just the location and the monster that's different. I've always thought that got a bit dull and monotonous, but of course now you can see more of it. Virtually the whole season, which is amazing, really. Because as I was watching it, in fact, exactly at the point I got to Enemy of the World was released on iTunes, which was lucky for me. Thank you for the BBC for sorting that out. I'm sure you did it on purpose. Is how good Series 5 looks. It's probably the most lush and expensive looking season up until Philip Hinchcliffe comes in with his slightly lax attitude towards staying in budget. The decision to just do one set and set everything in there, you lose a variety of scripts, but in terms of how good the show looks, all the locations are amazingly well realised. Of course, most famously the Underground in Web of Fear was so good it fooled the real London Underground. You had to think you maybe film it illegally there. And the Glacier in the Ice Warriors, the Monastery in the Abominable Snowmen. The odd thing is, of all the stories in the season that exist in their entirety, the only two that don't... Now, the only one that doesn't look brilliant is Tomb of the Cybermen, which is interesting because out of a reputation before it came back of being this big, expensive classic, and when it came back, a lot of people went, oh that's a bit rubbish, really. And there was sort of general assumption that the missing stories probably aren't as good as we thought, based on the soundtracks, and if any of us came back, we'd probably have the same reaction, but no, Enemy of the World and Web of Fear live up to their soundtracks. They look so much better than you would expect, and it sort of made me realise that Tomb of the Cybermen just looks a bit rubbish. The set isn't as good as the other sets. The Cybermen don't look as good as either the Ice Warriors or Snowmen, which, consider the Snowmen as sort of big killer teddy bears with guns, is kind of worrying. And it's got sort of unintentional, I think, but slightly unpalatable racist overtones with sort of suave foreigners with comedy foreign accents, a big silent black man who dies, of course, coming right after Evil of the Daleks with its big silent black man who dies in it as well. That happening back to back is a bit awkward. I mean, there's still some nice little bits in Tomb of Cybermen, but overall I think that's probably the weak link of the stories that exist for Series 5. But that's say that the 2 episodes we have of A Wheel in Space aren't especially brilliant either, but you never know, the other 4 could be packed to the gills with amazing stuff. It's got more Zoe in. You'll be able to see that if A Wheel in Space existed. that would probably make up for any shortfalls for the rest of the story. Season 6 is sort of coasting a bit. It does have some very good stories in it, in The Mind Robber, which is probably my favourite Troughton. Nothing to do with Zoe's catsuit, so you may be spotting a pattern here. But it's got this sort of fantastic, mad, mental imagery to it. And it's done very well. For a season, it looks a lot rougher production-wise than Series 5 does. It looks great. It's got so many lovely conceits, like Acid and Jamie for an episode. It's sort of the one episode where you could do that when the actor was ill. That just worked so brilliantly. The invasion is good fun. It sort of sets up the John Pertwee era better than most of the John Pertwee era is, to be honest. I think Troughton works better with a Brigadier because he's not as much of a cock. I may be giving away what I'll be saying in the Pertwee video a bit now, but otherwise it's a bit lacklustre. Series 6, the Dominators is awful. The Crotons is okay, mainly livened up by Philip Maddock. The Space Pirates, where it's a story where the entire idea was, let's base it around all of these amazing special effects, and you can't see most of it now. Maybe this model work is so brilliant, it makes it a lot better, but just based on the audio, it's pretty painful. Zoe's hot pants for the surviving episode. But again, there's a pattern there. However, the War Games is I think it actually beats the Caves of Amazani for me as the best regeneration, whatever they call it at the time, of course, story of them all. It is too long, the 10 episodes, and you can tell in places that they were sort of vamping and making it up as I went along, because they suddenly had 10 weeks to fill and no scripts for it. There's a bits where people get captured and escape, and that it really leaded anywhere. You probably cut out sort of a running back and forth across no man's land, and it probably has the biggest piece of blatant padding in any 1960s Doctor Who story. The bit where the Doctor amazes a German soldier by using the sonic screwdriver to unscrew something, and they spend what feels like about an hour. And you go, look, it screws it up, screws it down, up, down. Yet, apart from that, even bits of padded, generally entertaining padding, it's got an air of tension to it. The twists early on, where they make you think that it's going to be a historical story, and then it's got aliens in it, and then it's got somebody who knows the Doctor. And there's that fantastic moment, maybe my favourite moment of the entire Troughton era, when the War Chief sees the Doctor for the first time and they recognise each other. It's just electric. And so well played by both actors. A brilliant moment. And sort of gradual realisation that there is this connection to the Doctor's past. I mean, what I really love is the way the words Time Lord first thrown into conversation in an entirely casual way by a minor supporting character, as if they've got no significance whatsoever, and then it just slowly builds up when you realise they're his people. And obviously the focus is mostly on those last 2 episodes, and particularly the last episode of his trial, but all the stuff with the actual War Games looks good, because of course it's stuff BBC can do really well, period drama, and it was all costumes from stock, so the lack of money by that point wasn't affecting it. And the pop art deco with the aliens' headquarters is great fun as well. And it's sort of all the historical fighting stuff is the sort of stuff you love when you were a kid. You know, Roman soldiers, American Civil War soldiers, the First World War soldiers all teaming up. And there's a sort of lovely proto-Blackadder goes forth black comedy to the World War I bits. Sort of idea of these jolly British soldiers going over the top to horrible deaths was both funny and bleak. And the sort of 8 episodes there's a lot of irrelevant stuff, but it's entertaining, well done stuff that builds up the tension. And that last episode, with that clip, so beloved of Blue Peter, the Doctor defended himself. It's sort of brilliant. And the Time Lords. I am a huge fan of Deadly Assassin, but I think sort of bleak, dark, disinterested Time Lords here are probably more interesting than any Time Lords we've had since. Even though I like a lot of the other Time Lords stuff that came after. As you can sort of see this society, that's the society that the Doctor would want to get the hell away from. And the ending, it is one of those bits of television I cry at. It is such an extraordinary bit of television. Dark as well. Zoe and Jamie lose everything they've experienced over the last 3 years in Jamie's case. All his memories destroyed, they're mentally violated. And then Doctor Who is defeated, he loses. It's probably his biggest defeat of the entire original series. He's effectively killed, loses his TARDIS, where they slightly retcon that from the start of Spearhead in Space, when it goes to Earth with him. It's just completely gets me every single time. Brilliantly well done. And sort of a perfect capstone to one of the best overall eras of the entire programme. In terms of the other characters, he does very well for companions as well. Ben and Polly pick up from Hartnell very well. You can tell they both got along better with Troughton. They're nice and funny. Even if made slightly redundant once Jamie comes on board. I'll leave him to last. Victoria is the weak link for me. Looks very pretty, but is just annoying. Never really wants to be there. I mean, they do make a play of that, of how depressing she finds it all, and how useless she is at adventuring in her last story. But that doesn't really make her any more palatable before that. And they never really had a handle on how to write a Victorian character either. Frequently coming across sort of veering wildly between a sort of over-the-top stereotype of a prim mom and sort of just typical 1960s girl. And you could say maybe that would be very hard to pull off a period piece companion, but all the time she was in the TARDIS, she was with somebody from history as well, who had similar inconsistent writing, but it worked for them. And of course, the other female companion, Zoe. Wendy Padbury is adorable, very well played, very sweet, great chemistry with Troughton and Hines, and is just lovely, and has some great costumes as well. But of course, Jamie is the big second Doctor companion, the big companion full stop. I think some of the others just about edge him out in terms of length of time on the show. I think thanks to split seasons, Amy Pond, for example, I think did it a bit longer than him. But most episodes of any companion, and the chemistry between him and Troughton is brilliant. They play off each other so well. Such a great friendship, and it's such a shame, really, because it does work so well, that this is basically the end of the traditional male companion. You know, maybe a couple of other experiments of it. Harry Sullivan and in Davison era, but then Turlough and Adric really aren't in the same style as Stephen or Jamie. So this is sort of the end of that three character setup that had been the norm since Ian and Barbara left. Because the Brigadier comes in as effectively the male companion in the following season, but he's now the Doctor's boss, and that changes the dynamic. And when the Brigadier goes to becoming just a semi-regular, later in Pertwee, there is another male character to fill that role. And I think that's a shame that got lost, because A, having a male companion as well means it's not doesn't seem as sexist as it might. When it's just a girl there asking all the dumb questions, you can sort of spread it out evenly between the man and the woman, and it doesn't seem as if the one who is there to ask and get into trouble so the Doctor can rescue them is just a girl. But sexism is something we'll talk about in the Pertwee video as well. And also because it just works. These are two actors who clearly absolutely adore each other in real life. They're infectious, they're fun, and even the Dominators, which is terrible story. The scenes between Troughton and Hines are just lovely. Best Doctor-companion dynamic of the entire show, easily. Yeah, I say that over Sarah Jane, over Eggs, over Rose. And that is sheer casting alchemy, and makes even the weakest Troughton story watchable. But overall, yes, Patrick Troughton, very good Doctor, very good era, saw off the 60s with style. In the next video, which hopefully will be up fairly soon, because I actually finished John Pertwee yesterday, I'll be talking about the first colour era of the show, the 1970s, and the Doctor who is the most different from all the others, at least in terms of what his era was like. So look out for that. And Hound, I hope this has made you very happy. And for the 3 other people who watch these, I hope you've enjoyed it as well. Be seeing you.